Much of what survives to us from the ancients are little scraps, little bits of wisdom. But these little bits of wisdom from the emperor of Rome, from a slave, from one of Rome's power brokers, these mantras, these sayings, these epigrams as they were often called, that survive to us from the ancients are incredibly powerful. They pack a punch. That's what I want to talk about in today's episode. Some Stoic ideas, some Stoic concepts that can serve as mantras for your life. These are tried and tested bits of wisdom that have survived for thousands of years for a reason, because they're powerful, because they're important, because you want to live by them. This one's a paradoxical expression. It basically means make haste slowly. And it was a favorite of the Emperor Augustus, who was first known as Octavian. And even the transition from Octavian to Augustus is something that takes time because he's an incredibly disciplined person. He was going places, but he did so slowly, methodically, so no one could ever accuse him of being a revolutionary or a disruptor. He did things calmly, he did them carefully, he did them deliberately. And he gets this from his Stoic teachers, Athenodorus and Arius Didymus. One of the things they told him, for instance, was before he ever lost his temper, he needed to count all the letters of the alphabet first. They understood that getting angry in the moment often set things back. Make haste slowly is about being deliberate, conscientious. It doesn't mean that you take forever. It means you take the amount of time that it needs to take, and that by rushing and doing it quickly, you often make it take longer than it needs to. In the military, they say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's what this Latin expression means also. One of my heroes, the great Civil War general, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the most aggressive of the generals, but he got the job done. You could contrast him to someone like McClellan, who Lincoln accused of having the slows. It's not just that he took a while to get going, it's that he never actually got going and got where he was supposed to go. George Thomas wins some of the most incredible victories for the Union in the Civil War. He gets this nickname, the Rock of Chickamauga, because he, again, once he knows where he's going, once he has his aim, he's not going to be pushed off that. He's not going to be knocked off. Nothing is going to get between him and where he wants to go. So this is an expression about having a sense of urgency, but also being disciplined and responsible. It's energy plus moderation. It's measured exertion. It's eagerness, but reined in with a sense of control. And Suetonius, the Roman historian, which is from whom we hear that this is one of Augustus's favorite expressions, he said that Octavian thought nothing less becoming in a well-trained leader than haste and rashness. Actually, a number of Octavian's other favorite expressions dance around this idea. He says, better a safe commander than a bold, and that is done quickly enough, which is done well enough. Here we go. This basically says you have to have a strong mind and a strong body. We tend to project backwards. Today we think of philosophers as academics, theorists, nerds, right? University professors. But that's not who the Stoics were. Certainly Marcus Aurelius is not just the emperor of Rome. He's a general in the army. He's trained in wrestling and boxing and hunting. Seneca pushed himself physically. He tried to see how little he could survive on. He did an annual cold plunge. Socrates was renowned not just for his ability to endure winter temperatures and nothing but a thin cloak. He was also, again, a soldier and an athlete. He loved to take long walks. He was active out in the world. Because you have to be. He actually says no citizen has a right to not take care of themselves physically, to not understand what their bodies are capable of. There's a story about Theodore Roosevelt that I tell in The Obstacle is the Way and in Discipline is Destiny. He's a young boy, but he's asthmatic and he's weak, he's frail, and his father comes to him one day and he says, you've got the mind, Theodore, but you don't have the body. And this young kid, he was about 12, he looks at his father and he says, okay, I will make my body. And that's when Theodore Roosevelt embarks on what he comes to call the strenuous life. You can still visit the house he grew up in and see the gym where he made his body. And his sister, who was watching, said this was the first promise that he made to himself. And most importantly, he kept it to himself. That's something Seneca talks about. He says, we treat the body rigorously so that it's not disobedient to the mind. That's what this Latin expression means. That's what this motto is: strong mind and a strong body. This is one we understand on some level, but run away from. It's this idea that from struggle, we emerge stronger. Nietzsche said that what does not kill you makes you stronger. And we know that at some level. And yet, what do we spend most of our time doing? Trying to avoid struggle, trying to avoid adversity, trying to avoid difficulty. And this is because it's hard. We know, like, for instance, about PTSD. What we don't think enough about, what is also true and also observed by psychologists and social scientists, is this idea of post-traumatic growth. We can be and often are better for what we've gone through. Seneca would talk about how he pitied people who had never gone through adversity or difficulty because they didn't know what they were capable of, right? You think about the last couple of years, you think of that difficulty, right? You think about how tough it was. If you had asked yourself at the beginning, did you think you were capable of getting through all this? Maybe you would have said no, but you know now that you are. One thing we emerge from struggle with is an understanding of how we're going to respond to struggle and difficulty. We have a better sense of our own capacity. It is not necessarily the case that we need to seek out adversity or difficulty, although we can in the physical arena, certainly, but it is true that we must embrace the adversity that finds us. We must embrace the challenges and the trauma and the struggle. All of it has been chosen for us in some way, and we can choose to be made better for it. It's not just that we accept these struggles that are there. This leads to another great expression. This is kind of a bonus one here, amor fati, which basically means you don't just resign yourself to it, as Nietzsche said, but you embrace it. You love it. Because what other choice do you have? So by deciding to see this as an opportunity, as your fate, as something uniquely suited to you in this moment, you have a chance to really turn it into something. The Stoics wanted to be like that fire, that it doesn't matter what you throw on top of it. As Marcus Aurelius writes, it's turning into flame and brightness and heat. That's how we emerge from the struggle better. It's like a crucible, if you will. That's how we turn what has happened to us into opportunities and fuel. If you watch these videos or you've bumped into me in Austin or come to one of my talks, you've almost certainly seen me in stuff from today's sponsor because I've been wearing it since long before they were a sponsor. I'm wearing stuff from Viore all the time. I like their joggers. I like their running shorts. I like their t-shirts. My wife likes their stuff. I like when my wife wears their stuff because it looks good, it feels good, and it's just awesome whether you're wearing it every day or you need it for performance. Like in my life, I'm writing in the morning, I'm doing a podcast or something on camera, and then I want to jump in the pool with my kids, or I want to go for a bike ride, or I want to go for a run, or I'm getting on an airplane. I don't want to change like a bunch of times. I love that I can use their stuff in all different facets of my life. They just make awesome, versatile, comfortable clothing. Their performance jogger is made from a super soft dream knit fabric, perfect for low impact workouts, traveling, or lounging. Viore is an investment in your happiness. For our listeners, they're offering 20% off your first purchase. Plus, you can enjoy shipping on any US order over $75 and get free returns. Get yourself some of the most comfortable, versatile clothing on the planet at viore.com/dailystoic. That's VUORI.com/dailystoic. There's some exclusions that apply. You can visit the website for full terms and conditions. This one is a fascinating one to me because it's the opposite of something that's so popular today. A lot of people talk about positive visualization, but they don't talk enough about negative visualization. Imagining what could happen so you can be prepared for it. Seneca talks about how the unexpected blow lands heaviest. And that the thing that a leader can never say is, oh, I didn't think that would happen. You have to think about it because if the leader's not thinking about it, if you are not thinking about it, who is? And if nobody's thinking about it, who's preparing for it? Who's coming up with plan B? Who's toughening yourself up? Who's doing the work so that you can handle this? Sometimes people think that negative visualization or thinking about bad things can manifest them into happening. Marcus Aurelius talks about this. He says, but do you fear that thinking about reaping wheat is going to make that get reaped? No, of course not, right? Like no one's scared of talking about other potentialities. We just have this superstition when those things involve us. And you got to put that aside. You got to think about the things that could happen. Seneca talks about if you're going on a shipwreck, think about a shipwreck. Think about pirates. Think about weather delays, right? Think about choppy water, right? What are you going to do if that happens? How are you prepared for that to happen? How can, at the very least, you not be surprised if that does happen? Because it's a very normal thing that happens all the time. And by the way, things that have never happened before, they happen all the time too. So you got to be ready. For the Stoics, the idea was that nothing happens to a wise person contrary to their expectation, because they're not naive. They are aware. They are informed. They have wisdom. And wisdom is a sense of the possibilities in a given exchange, interaction, event, outcome, process. You got to know what could happen, and you got to be ready for that to happen. This is a tough one for people, but it's a timeless bit of wisdom. And it's this idea that who we are determines what's going to happen, the kind of outcomes we're going to get in life. It doesn't mean that horrible people don't succeed. It does mean that that success will be horrible for those people. So for the Stoics, the idea, again, let's focus on what we control. What we control is our character. We control the values we hold, the habits we practice, the principles we choose to live by. And when you see someone with bad character, when you see someone with bad values, they're not going to surprise you. They are telling you who they are. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. When someone tells you who they are with their behavior, believe them. As we talked about, Seneca said that a leader can't say, oh, I didn't think that would happen. This is partly because a leader has to look at the character of the people they're bringing on, the people they're bringing into the organization, the people they're electing. Why on earth would you have thought it would go any different? They told you who they were. They told you what their character was. Someone with bad values, someone in the sway of ego, someone who's fundamentally insecure, someone who is dishonest, right? This is not going to end well for them, and it's not going to end well for you either, trying to associate with them. There's a story about Musonius Rufus that I like. There was this obnoxious man who was obsessed with money. He gave him some. He gave him a bunch of money, and people said, why would you reward this? And he said, money is exactly what this guy deserves. What Musonius understood was that this wasn't going to change this guy. It was only going to reveal what he already knew about him, and it was probably going to bring about this guy's ruin faster than any kind of difficulty or adversity he could have bestowed on them. Let's look at Marcus Aurelius, right? Absolute power is supposed to corrupt absolutely, but why doesn't that happen for Marcus? And it's because the character that he strove to develop in himself, the character that was inculcated by his mentors and advisors and philosophy teachers, he fought not to be Caesarified, as he said. He fought to be the person that philosophy tried to make him. He wanted that expression, character is fate, to reveal who he actually was. And what we see is that he was fundamentally a good person, not a perfect one, and there were flaws in him, and those were revealed as well, but his character led him to a pretty good fate. This one, maybe you've seen before. I mean, there's a restaurant at Disneyland named after it. Maybe you've seen it tattooed on some people's bodies, or you hear it every Halloween. Memento Mori, remember you are mortal. And it's one of the most basic Stoic practices there is. It might seem morbid, it might seem a little dark, but it is essential because it gives us urgency, it gives us perspective. Gives us clarity. You could leave life right now, Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditation, let that determine what you do and say and think. That's what Memento Mori allows us to do. Why do people procrastinate? Why do they put things off? Why do they keep practicing bad habits? Why do they waste time? They do it because they think they have forever, but they don't. Seneca says it's the craziest thing in the world that we waste this precious resource. And he says it's wrong to think of death as this thing in the future. It is not a thing in the future. It's happening right now. He says the time that passes belongs to death. We are dying every minute. We are dying every day. The time you wasted this morning, you'll never get back. The time you spent watching this video, the time I spent making this video, it has to be spent well because we don't get it again. Life is short. You got to live it well. And you got to live it with an awareness of the fact that you do not have forever. None of us do. So I want to end there. These are some of my favorite mantras, Latin and Greek concepts from the Stoics that I think are worth repeating, memorizing, and applying to your daily life. If you want to keep your Stoicism-inspired journey going, sign up for the Daily Stoic email at dailystoic.com/email. It's one Stoic-inspired email every single day. Wisdom to help you with the problems of life, as Stoicism is intended. And you can sign up at dailystoic.com/email. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I'd love for you to join us.